Hi, I'm Sophie from Encodian, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can start to directly use Encodian Flowr actions within your Power Apps. So calling an Encodian Flowr action directly from the Power App means that you don't have to build out the action in a Power Automate flow and then trigger the flow and wait for the response. It means that the action is going to be directly triggered from the app, and it means the response is going to come back to you quicker. So I'm going to be using 3 different Flowr actions in my solution today. So let's go ahead and take a look. So for the solution today, I've created this password manager Power App where you can create new passwords and view passwords that you have created. Before I go into the Power App, I first want to show you how you can actually add Flowr as a data source so that you can then call the Flowr actions. So to do this, you would add it the same way you would add any other connector into the Power App. You need to come across and go to the Data tab here. And you can see that I've already added in the Encodian Utilities connector because this is the Flowr connector that I need for all 3 of my actions today. So to actually go ahead and add one of the Flowr connectors in, all you need to do is press Add Data, search Encodian, and then select the connector you're interested in. If you haven't already connected your connector up to Power Apps before, it may prompt you for your API key. So just make sure you have it handy to copy and paste in. Once you've done that, your connector will then appear in your list of data sources like mine does here. So the way that you actually call the actions from this connector is in PowerFX. So the same way how you would run a Power Automate flow, that's the similar syntax that we're going to be using to call the Encodian Flowr actions. We'll have a look at that a bit later on in the demo today. So back to my actual password manager app. I've got 2 main screens for my application. The first one creates new passwords and the second one allows you to view passwords. So let's have a look at the create new password screen first. So this is what my create new password screen looks like, allowing the user to select the length of the password and allowing the user to say whether they want it lowercase, uppercase, numbers and symbols included. I'm using these inputs because these are the inputs to the Encodian Flowr generate password action, which we're going to be using and calling when this button is pressed. So the same way how you would provide these inputs into the action in Power Automate, it's the same in a Power App. However, we don't have that action block like before. We're going to be providing in these inputs as PowerFX. So let's actually take a look at what that looks like. So this is the onSelect property of my generate password button. I'm putting this into a set because I want to set the returned generated password as a variable so then I can display it in my app in this text input box here down below. So I'm going to call this password that gets generated result just to keep things simple. And this section of the PowerFX formula, this section is what is actually calling the Encodian Flowr action. So the syntax for this is, if I start to type it out, you need to type out the Encodian connector that you're using. And then when you press dot, you can see that I now have a list of all of the available actions underneath that connector. So here we're generating a password. So I'm going to select generate password. And then if I do an open bracket, I can then see the inputs that are going to be needed. So the first thing is the length. And as we can see up here, that is the length text.text, which is this text input box here. And I've limited this text input box to only include number format. So that's going to prevent any errors in case a text is provided. So I'm just going to copy and paste this here so we can build this out together. Once that has been added, we can now see the other inputs become available. So I'm just going to start with include, and then the prompt then gives you the whole list of the other inputs and the syntax that's needed in the PowerFX formula. So I'm just going to remove this. So once the action has been called, we need to then actually grab the resulting password. So if I just remove this, we can see that this is all of the returned variables that come back from the action. So different Flowr actions come back with different resulting variables. Most of them come back with the returned value as result. However, with others, it may be worded differently. but it's quite obvious to see what one you need to bring back. So this is going to bring back the actual generated password, which will then get set into this results variable here. So what are we doing with the generated password once it's been created? That is being set as the default value of this text input box here. So the password, once generated, will appear in that box. So let's go ahead and actually generate a password. So we can see my password has been generated. It does have a length of 10, it includes numbers, and it includes uppercases. This reset icon here in its onSelect property will reset all of the password inputs, and it will set the result variable back to blank, and this will remove the generated password so that the user can go and do this again if they're not happy with the result. So you may be thinking what this box is for down here. This box here allows the user to just type in the name of the account that the password is for, and this will all be saved back to Dataverse so that when the user goes to view their passwords, they'll know what the password is actually for. Because this text input box here is blank at the moment, it means the user can't actually save this password to Dataverse. And that's just to make sure that passwords aren't being saved back to Dataverse without this name, because if the user comes back and they just see a password but not the account it's linked to, they're not going to know what it's for, especially because the passwords are random. So if we have a look at the display mode of this icon, if the account text.text, which is this text input box here, is blank, or if the generated password variable is blank, it's going to be disabled. However, if they both are not blank, so they both contain values, it's going to be display mode.edit, which means the user will be able to save their generated password. So let's test this. So I'm just going to test this now. And we can see as soon as you start typing, this now becomes available for the user to click. So before I click save, I just want to take a screenshot of this password here. And this is because when we save this password into Dataverse, we're going to be encrypting that password. So the password, when we look at the Dataverse table, isn't going to look like this. It's going to look completely different because it's going to be secured and encrypted. And we're encrypting this by calling our second Flowr action of the solution, called AES encryption, when we click the onSelect property here. So we're going to be encrypting the password as we save it into Dataverse. So let's have a look at what this looks like. So when the save button is clicked, we're doing a patch back to my Dataverse passwords table. We're creating a new line, so it's going to be default password. We're going to be saving the account name as account text.text, which is this text in this input box here. And we're going to be saving the password as the encrypted password. So here I'm running the Encodian Utilities AES encryption action, and I'm going to be setting the result as that password. So I can actually call the action in the patch function. The syntax for this action is similar to the syntax that we looked at before for generating the password. I've got the name of the connector with a full stop. I've then got the name of the action with an open bracket. And I've then got the different inputs for the AES encryption action. I'm then closing the bracket and I'm doing dot, which if we type this out will bring back the list of available result variables. And I'm going to be selecting the result, which will be the actual encrypted password. So that is what that's doing. And then I'm just going to be selecting my home icon, which is here, which is going to navigate us to the home screen. It's going to reset all of the input boxes on this page, and it's going to reset that password result variable back to blank. So the reason I took a screenshot of this password is because I'm going to use that screenshot when we go ahead and view the password later on in the demo, so we can compare to make sure that when we view the password back in the app, it has been correctly decrypted. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and save this back into Dataverse. So let's actually go ahead and look at our table in Dataverse and have a look to make sure that the encryption was successful. So this is my Dataverse table. We can see I've got a column for the account name, I've got a column for the password, and created on is here as default. So we can see that the blog demo password I've just created has successfully saved back to Dataverse. And we can see that the password has been successfully encrypted because that password does not match this generated password. So the encryption has been successful. So let's go back to the Power App to see how we can actually view these passwords back in the app. So this is my View Passwords page. On my onVisible property of the page, I am doing a refresh of the passwords table so that all of the data in this gallery is up to date. So this gallery here is just a simple vertical gallery. However, I am doing a filter on the items. So on the items property, I am doing a filter to make sure that I can only see the passwords I have created. So to do this, I'm just filtering the passwords table, and I'm filtering by created by .azure AD object ID, which is what's going to be saved back in Dataverse, is equal to user, so that is the current user in the app, .enter object ID. So I'm just making sure that the two Azure object IDs match, because that means that I must have created that password, so that means I can only see my created passwords in the app. So I can come through and I can click onto the blog demo password here, and if I click this icon, it's going to then show me my password here. So what is that icon actually doing? That icon is firstly selecting the parent because we want to select that blog demo record. And then we're using our third and final Flowr action for this solution. But this time we are decrypting the saved password from Dataverse. So again, I'm setting this in a variable called password. And then I'm using the same syntax. So I've got the name of my Flowr connector, dot the name of my Flowr action, open bracket, and all of the inputs to that Flowr action. So this item.password, that is going to be the saved encrypted password, which we're then going to decrypt. And these inputs here are going to be the same inputs as we used for the AES encryption. And that's just going to ensure we get back to our original value. And then again, I've got a close bracket and dot result because we want to save that original resulted password into my passwords variable here. So with this passwords variable, similar to the other screen, I'm then setting that variable as the default to this text input box. So if I just make this a bit bigger, we can see that this is the original password that I had generated. So the decryption has worked successfully. So in the solution today, we've looked at how you can add Flowr connectors directly into a Power App, and how using Power Effects, you can call the Flowr actions to complete whatever action you're trying to do directly from the Power App. So this means that you don't have to then create a Power Automate flow to do the same thing, and you get your results directly into the Power App rather than having to wait for the flow to run to then bring you back the results. So we used 3 different Flowr actions today. We used the generate password action, we used the AES encryption, and then we used the AES decryption. And all 3 of these sit under the Encodian Flowr utilities connector. If you want more examples on the Power Effects syntax, I do have another example in the blog that accompanies this video where I look at flipping an image. So this deals with using images in the syntax. And I also have a different blog and video where I look at how you can translate text directly in the Power App too, just if you want an idea of more examples of how to write your syntax. As always, if you have any questions about anything you've seen today, please leave me a comment down below or get in touch with us at Encodian. And as always, happy automating.